Let's talk about Story Framework's editor utility tools. So opening up the content browser inside the Story Framework folder, we can go to Utility and we'll find the SF_tools_EUW or Editor Utility Widget. We can right click on this and select Run Editor Utility Widget. Now normally this should just pop up in your viewport. I like to dock it next to my details panel in the right hand side panel. This way we can easily access and change any values alongside the details panel. Sometimes we will need to cycle between these two panels for information. So let's jump right into the different tools within this editor utility. So first off we have Interactables. Next we have Level Tools and the Viewport Camera Tools. Let's start with Interactables. So back into our details panel, if we select an interactable, let's take this cassette for example. As per usual, we'll have our interaction data structure. All this information will be touched on in the interaction tutorial, but this is essentially where all the different types of interaction and combinations would be stored and edited. So for instance, our object name, static or skeletal mesh, the different types of interaction methods and their settings. A common problem with laying out customizable interaction data this way is that sometimes it can be quite overwhelming. So the Interactables section sort of aims to remedy this issue. We separate all the information into sort of separate categories and only display customizable options if they are applicable to the previous settings that we have changed. So let's set up a little example. With our cassette selected, we can go over into interaction settings and we can change our primary interaction method here. So we can select from the different interaction methods within Story Framework. Some interaction methods won't allow a secondary method, for instance the inspect. If we have inspect selected, a secondary method isn't possible, as the only other secondary interaction method there is inspect. So having two inspects wouldn't really make sense. Here we can also change our interaction collision radius. So we can change this and make it a bit larger and hit apply changes. This will then update the radius that will block the interaction trace. Let's jump into modifying this interaction method. So with any primary interaction method selected, we can hit this little edit icon. And this will take us to the details panel for the inspect method. So we can change the type of inspect method here. We'll leave this as 3D inspect plus a readable page. We can insert a inspect actor. So this can be a separate actor blueprint that gets substituted in for the normal static or skeletal mesh used on this interactable. We can define whether or not we want the player to be able to pick this item up while they're inspecting it. We then have values for adjusting the distance from the camera when we inspect and the object offset. And then we have our readable pages and text color. So let's change our first readable page to this is an example of text, and we can give it a icon or a background image. So let's search page, we can find the page background overlay. Let's also change the text color to be black and hit apply changes. If we jump in and hit play and test this out, we go up to our item that we were editing and we inspect and we read it. You'll see we now have that page overlay in the background. Our text color has changed alongside our text. So these settings apply to any interaction method we pick. So if we go up to the quick pickup, we hit apply changes and change these settings, we can define the inventory icon for this item, whether or not the item can be combined or used or dropped. Then we have the drag object, again settings for the drag interaction method, as well as the has item interaction method. We can set up target items here. So if we go over to this generator for instance, we have settings to look for a crafted wrench item and we have a icon for it as well. If we hit play just to see what this looks like, we go over to our generator. We can see we have our icon displayed above the prompt, and the interaction is essentially locked until we have the target item. I did skip over the first category, which is the basic info. Here we can define our object name, the static or skeletal mesh. We then have prompt settings. In here we can change the custom prompt text, the distance at which the prompts start to fade in, and the prompt offset. Then finally we have the sound settings. So here we will be able to assign sounds on certain actions when we interact with this interactable. Again, this is relative to the interaction method that is chosen. So if we select a drag object, we'll have the options for playing a sound when the object is moved and when it's moved near the origin. If we find an inspectable, we can see we have the play sound on inspect and the play sound on interacted as well. One last thing before we move on to the next section in our editor utility tools. With any normal static or skeletal mesh selected in your level, you'll get an option to convert the selected to an interactable, with an option to delete the original selection. So in this case we want to do that. So if we just go ahead and hit this button, it will convert this actor to a interactable, and we can then define all the information here. So this helps streamline the process of converting your levels into levels that consist of interactable objects. Next up we have the level tools. So this is just a pretty straightforward and commonly used tool set of buttons and options to modify your levels. So if we go ahead and just create a simple shape here, we can demonstrate this. Let's start from the top. If we have a single actor selected, we can choose to copy the selected actor's location. If we have multiple actors selected, we can copy the median location, which is essentially the center location of all the actors selected. So if we take 3 of our actors here, all of these cubes, and we duplicate them, and we create a smaller cube for demonstration. If we select all 3 of our cubes and we copy the medium location, we'll get the copied location down here in the toolbar or in the output log. And then with our smaller cube selected, we can go down and set selected actor's location to the copied location, which will insert it in between these 3 cubes. So this applies for single actor copying as well. So if we copy the selected actor's location, we can simply set that location of the small cube to the big cube's location as well. Jump into rotation tasks. We can rotate the actors towards our copied location. So let us duplicate this big cube and copy the location. And then with this other big cube selected, let's delete these. We can hit rotate actors towards copied location, and it will rotate this cube towards our bigger cube. We can also randomize the selected actor's rotation on a specified axis. So if we select Z and it's randomized, it will randomize the Z rotation. This is useful for smaller items that get scattered across the ground in your levels, and you need some randomization to their rotations. This makes that process a little bit quicker. This is also per instance, so not all of the selected actors will get the same rotation. Each instance of the selected actors will rotate individually. We then have our grouping tasks, simple buttons to group the selected actors, unlock the group selection, and lock the group selection again. And then finally, towards the bottom of our level tools, we have the deconstruct selected actor into meshes. So this works on any sort of actor blueprint that consists of a static mesh. We can hit this deconstruct selected actor, and it will convert our actor into a regular static mesh. Next, let's hop into Viewport camera tools. So if we open up this section, we'll be greeted with our camera location in the viewport and our rotation in the viewport. We also have options to set the selected actors to our viewport camera transform. Again, this would act as you'd expect if we have an actor selected and we hit this button. it will just simply move our selected actors and rotate it towards the rotation of our camera. This specifically is useful for setting up NPC's cameras, as inside the details panel, we need to define the NPC character camera and the player character camera's location and rotation in the level. So this tool is useful to move our camera to a certain location where we want our camera actor to be during dialogue, and we can just simply copy the location and rotation into these values. This also applies for the custom view interact areas, as these also use world transform cameras, and same thing with the set custom view areas. These also use a world transform location for our camera. So our camera view, or our viewport camera section is quite a handy tool when using these different blueprints in Story Framework. So that should cover your quick introduction to Story Framework's editor utility tools.